Hey, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the BJJ Foxcast. I'm your host, Alex Martinez, and today I am really excited to have Jon Thomas on the podcast. Jon is the founder of Tap Cancer Out, the Tap Cancer Out Foundation, who services the community through donations and is very, very active in the, I would say, cancer research arena and philanthropy, through philanthropy. So, Jon, welcome to the show.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, man. We talked a little bit about the foundation itself before the podcast, but let's get into the origin of it. What was the catalyst that started all of this?
So it all started back in 2010, which is getting to be a longer and longer time ago. But so I actually have a very close friend that started an organization in San Diego called Classy, and they went through a lot of different metamorphoses. They started as just a way to get 20-somethings involved in charitable causes. So they did bar crawls and things like that 20-somethings would actually want to do. Then they evolved into an event company, and then eventually a software company, and a very successful one now. And so they hosted the Classy Awards, which there were not really many or any back then or even now awards that actually celebrated nonprofits and charities and volunteers and people who are really changing the world, who celebrate actors and actresses and things like that. But so they wanted to do the whole black tie thing. So I went out there in San Diego for their Classy Awards. It was their second or third year doing it. Just to be a support for my friend and to have fun and to dress up and meet some cool people and whatever. I was just working in advertising at the time. And but what I experienced totally changed me. Hearing all of these incredible stories that people were telling about the change that they were creating in the world, lucrative careers that they were leaving, or taking what they learned in the military and transitioning it to how do we help people domestically and things like that. So I was really moved, but I was also embarrassed that I wasn't doing anything. So, at cocktail hour, introducing myself, I didn't really have anything going on, like they're like, oh yeah, I run this nonprofit that builds schools in Tanzania. What do you do?
Wow.
I'm just a middle management at an advertising agency, nothing cool. And so I was like, you know what, I'm before I even fly home, before I even get out of this chair at this award show, I'm going to come up with an idea. And that idea was Tap Cancer Out. I didn't know what it was going to be. It was just, okay, I want to create something that raises money for cancer fighting organizations. And at the time I was a blue belt in jiu-jitsu. Luckily I did not have the blue belt blues. So once I got my blue belt, I actually started training more and more. And so I was really involved. This is pre-kids. So, jiu-jitsu was first and foremost on my radar at the time. So I was like, I'm going to combine the two, especially because I saw how fast the sport was growing. The tournaments that I would go to seemed to be attracting more and more people and were really big, but there was just no philanthropic presence. But it was also what intrigued me about the sport of jiu-jitsu. And of course it has its pitfalls, and not everyone's an angel, but of all the sports that I've played in my life, and I've played a ton of them, I was surprised to find the sportsmanship in jiu-jitsu, where you would think that in sort of a combat martial arts sport as it is, it would be the opposite, and a lot of bravado and that type of stuff. And there is, especially at the top levels. But when you're, a master's blue belt in your mid-30s going against another guy, there's really not that much, hatred between you two. And so a lot of my best jujitsu friends came from people I competed against in a tournament, not even people I train. I mean, of course I have friends from my own academy, but I'm surprised the friendships I built just on the competition mat. You're out there trying to kill each other for 5, 6, 7, 8 minutes. And then after that, it's like, oh, you have a son, I have a son. Oh, where do you train? And so it was just something totally unexpected from this sport. And so especially where it's sort of an individual yet also a team sport, so that was very interesting. So I had a lot of faith that this community could do some great things. So I just came up with that idea. It wasn't until actually 2012 that we even hosted an event. We hosted the first ever Tap Cancer Out charity BJJ Open in Stratford, Connecticut. I was hoping we would raise like $5,000, and I wanted to apply this model that I had actually experienced through the Leukemia Lymphoma Society. I did their team in training, so both my wife and I committed to raising $1,000 each for the Leukemia Lymphoma Society, and in return, they buy our bib to the race, and they give you like dinner, a team dinner the night before with all the other charitable racers. Got us a hotel room, and there's also a lot of training stuff leading up to the event. So we had a great time. We raised a ton of money, and we got a lot of perks. The issue was we hate to run, so we never did it again. You know, like if you are a runner, that's a great way, but we're not runners. And, you know, unless you run, bike, swim, or golf, there's really not a lot of charitable things that you can do. So you sort of have to fit your square peg into a round hole. So it's like, well, let me do this through something I am passionate about. And so I applied the same model. If you raise $250, you compete for free. If you raise 400, you compete for free and get a fundraiser t-shirt, and so on and so forth. So I created these fundraising perk levels, and you know, we bought hoodies and t-shirts and all sorts of stuff to give to our fundraisers, and we ended up raising almost $20,000 at that first event. So it like blew me away. We had like 150 competitors. I didn't really know how many to expect. It was all down and dirty. You know, our venue changed like 16 different times. We borrowed wrestling mats from the high school. You know, the referees were just my brown and black belt teammates. Like it was and it was one of the best run events we've ever had. Like other than starting a little bit late because I was hand writing the brackets. Other than that, it like went off without a hitch. No complaints, no referee issues like that. Everybody just had a good time. It was exhausting, and so I was like, I think we found something. So each year after that, we just started adding another tournament. So we went to Massachusetts, we went to San Diego, we actually went to Buffalo, Philadelphia, and we just started expanding until I couldn't do both my full-time job and Tap Cancer Out. So we made the leap, and I made the leap and went full-time, and that was in 2018. And now 2023, we're a full-time staff of 3 with a bunch of part-time folks that help us at the events and otherwise. So yeah, it's been kind of a crazy journey.
That is a crazy journey, man. And you know, going back to the friendships that you make through jiu-jitsu, it's pretty amazing. And you know, I say this almost every podcast. I tell people, you know, we spend a lot of time alone, so it's really important to be part of a community. And you found out early on, I mean, blue belt is pretty early in your jiu-jitsu life, that you know, the jiu-jitsu community rallies, right? When somebody, you know, sends out the signal, we rally. So it's really cool. So I want to talk about a couple things. I want to talk about that first event. I mean, it looks like you didn't do it in somebody's garage. It looks like you had a venue, right? You had at least one mat space, writing brackets. And you know, it's funny because we're so spoiled. Like everything's digital. You can update, you can see updates on your phone now. You can do all that stuff. But back then, I remember remember the little flip things for keeping score. Did you have those?
That's what we used. Of course we did. Yeah, it was like
fantastic.
PVC pipe with like little numbers that luckily my coach had 4 of them, or my instructor had 4 of them. So he brought them down. So that's how we got scored. Everything that we sort of acquired or bartered at that tournament, like has a backstory. Like we were supposed to borrow mats from a different high school in the town. And then our venue changed, and I'm like, oh my God, now I'm gonna have to like rent a truck and go get those mats and somehow bring them to this other high school. And then, but the new high school, which was actually we got because my wife is in the Athletic Hall of Fame at that high school, so she contacted the athletic director and was like, hey, can we use your gym? And he said, yeah. And then we were like, you know, we're having an issue with mats. And he's like, we just bought brand new wrestling mats if you want to use them. So we were like, yes. That's so it was just like the big wrestling square. And we used painter's tape to just like split it into fourths. So I'm sure the rings were like 12 by 12, like super tiny. But yeah, like, you know, all my family, all the volunteers were just family, friends, and teammates. But we somehow like scrounged everything together and figured it out.
That's so cool, man. Now so your first event raised almost $20,000, and you would think that people, foundations would be lining up, right, to accept that money. But it sounds like you had a little trouble giving that money away, right? Tell me about that.
Yeah, I mean, it still is to this day. It's kind of it's always a weird thing, but yeah, in the beginning when I said, hey, I have this like idea, I mean, in the very beginning, we didn't even know we were hosting events, so it was really hard to sell this idea. All I wanted these people to do is like say, yes, we'll take your money, and I suppose I could have just sent them a check after the fact.
Yeah.
But I wanted to like use their branding and their name and everything. I wanted them to like be part of the journey, so that if someone was like, hey, there's this weird jiu-jitsu tournament happening that claims that they're like supporting you, have you ever heard of them? And they say, never heard of them, I don't even know what jiu-jitsu is. That would have been a bad look.
Yeah.
So I wanted to make sure that like they were on board before we did anything. And then the very beginning, it wasn't even about an event. It was like, yeah, we might like sell t-shirts, I don't really know how we're going to get money, but I want to give it to you. So, it was really hard. Most people like didn't respond to emails or phone calls or anything, but the Leukemia Lymphoma Society Connecticut chapter was literally just a few buildings down from the ad agency that I worked at. So at lunch one day, I just drove over there. It was like, hey, I'm going to have money. I'm a real person. I work over here. By that time I had the idea for the event in my head, and I was like, we're actually gonna try to like host this event, and I just want to, and they were like, yes. When it comes to local like community chapters, they're much more willing to work with anybody. So they were like, yeah, we'd love to do it. And so we went off from there. So we ended up giving them $28,000 in our first year. So we raised money like selling t-shirts and merchandise in other ways. So it was even more than we had actually made at the event. And then in year 2, we gave them like $40,000 or something, or 60. So yeah, so we had like a 2-year partnership with them, and to this day we still donate to them. So if we have sort of a surplus at the end of the year, like both last year, so last year we donated $35,000 to them. This year we donated, I think, $30,000 to them. They never know it's coming. I just still have their wire transfer information. I just send it over to them as a thank you. And we do that for our first 3 partners: Leukemia Lymphoma Society, Pancreatic Cancer Action Network, and the St. Paul Aldrich Foundation, because they really worked with us when it was just a side hustle for me. And a lot of organizations didn't really want to be involved with something like jiu-jitsu, which, they had a lot of preconceived notions about what the sport was and what the community was about, and they didn't actually want to work with us. So
Yeah.
I was like, fine, I'll find somebody who does. So we still donate to them to this day, as a thank you for being with us when it was early. But even now, most of our beneficiaries, if we haven't worked with them for a long time, new beneficiaries come to us usually through recommendations, through community members who have been supported or helped by these organizations, or just happen to know somebody. Like we brought on Little Pink Houses of Hope, which is an organization in North Carolina, which is great because we have 2 tournaments in North Carolina, and they provide week-long retreats for breast cancer patients and their full families. So they actually work with like Airbnbs, and they actually get houses all sort of in the same community area, and everybody stays at them, and they have events throughout the week, and it's really cool. One of our volunteer coordinators, it's his high school teacher who started it, and so he recommended that to us this year. So we work with them, and also we brought on the Tom Coughlin J Fund. So Tom Coughlin was coach of the New York Giants and the Jacksonville Jaguars, and also Boston College.
Yep.
And so they actually support both the communities in the tri-state area and the Jacksonville area, and they gave financial support to one of our fundraisers. He was actually our top fundraiser at our Jacksonville tournament. Just a few weeks after he was the top fundraiser, his daughter was diagnosed with bone cancer.
Oh, wow.
So he was a huge supporter of ours just because he wanted to. And then it hit home. And then the Tom Coughlin J Fund not only supported them financially, but also gave her amazing experiences. His daughter was like on the field at a Jaguars game meeting Trevor Lawrence. And So they're one of our beneficiaries too. So we still, like, I love to have those types of homegrown relationships. We have other people who just, organizations that just hear about us and reach out to us and want to be our partners as well. So, but we strike out with some partners. They're all doing great work, but some are more supportive than others.
Yeah.
So we still see it like, some people still see us as a small fish, and with other organizations, our gift is 70% of their budget. So
Wow.
it really, yeah, because we work with nonprofits of all sizes. So like Alex's Lemonade Stand is one of our, we've given them the most gifts ever, and they're a pretty large organization. And what, but we also work with the we'll say Christopher's Haven, which is in Massachusetts. They provide housing for children who are going through a specific brain cancer treatment that is specific to Mass General Hospital and the Children's Hospital there. They work with a very, very, very small budget. So our gift is pretty transformative for them. But whether they're big or small, they all play a crucial role in the journey of a cancer patient. So we love to support all of them. So those relationships are really important to us, because I go back to the day where people really didn't want to work with us. So, but now it's hard. Now we have to say no to a lot of people, and that sucks too. You want to be able to support as many as you can. And we used to just support one. When we were able to broaden it out to 10, that was a really, really cool moment, because our gifts were getting a little too big for just one organization. Actually, our final gift to Alex is, when they were our last single beneficiary, was $870,000. So that's a lot to give to one organization. We still give them 250 or 275,000 each year, but that we were at a point where, okay, we can start spreading this out to a number of beneficiaries, but also beneficiaries that serve different purposes. So Alex is, we funded cancer research with them, but also family support services. But now we work with things like First Ascents and Camp Sunshine, which are more experiential, and Little Pink Houses of Hope. So we span the whole sort of journey, but those beneficiary relationships are really important to me.
Yeah, and that's something I wanted to touch on, because when I was a kid, my sister was diagnosed with leukemia. She was 4, I was 10 at the time. And at the time, I'm getting like pricked for blood, and I didn't know what's going on. I'm a kid, and and we were at MD Anderson Hospital in Houston quite a bit. I remember that vividly, and one of the moments I remember is showing up in the middle of the night to this strange house, just a few blocks away, I think it was, from the hospital, and they had beds, meals, people, counselors, and I'm talking to these counselors, and it was a Ronald McDonald House. And that's back in, a long time ago. but I'll never forget that. I'll never forget, like, we can just stay here, and, it's free, I guess, and at the time I didn't know there was people like you that were donating money to these houses, to these places. And cancer research obviously is the most important thing, but I don't think people understand like what it takes for a family to have to travel and stay and do all of the things, there's pets, and there's, houses, and there's all kinds of stuff that happens. And if you think about, like, yes, I want to donate to this foundation. Awesome. Cancer research is obviously the most important thing, but I think people need to understand the broad spectrum of finances that goes into that comes into play when you're dealing with
buying groceries, gas, like, just because there might be a treatment for your child's specific cancer, that doesn't mean that treatment is available at the hospital down the street. You might live in Houston and it's not available in anywhere but Boston. So now you got to get to Boston, and you might have 4 kids, and you might be a single parent. And how are you going to do that? So so we work with a lot of different organizations that offer a variety of those financial support and housing and things like that are really important just to get the treatment. That can hopefully save their lives.
Yeah. So tell me at the competitor level, right? Talk to me about what the commitment is for someone who wants to support Tap Out Cancer, right? I mean, I'm assuming they can just sign up for one of your events, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But how can someone, throughout the year, how does that work? Do they have some place where people can donate, and then they donate to the foundation?
So we obviously want our tournaments to be as big as possible, have as many competitors as possible, the divisions to be as full as possible, so you get a lot of matches, all that sort of stuff. So competitors have a choice between fundraising and not. So they can just pay a registration fee just like any other tournament. They can show up, have a great time, well-organized event, get their medal, feel good about themselves. Maybe they stop by the merch table and buy a Tap Cancer Out hat, and then they leave and they feel great. And that's totally fine. About 40 to 50% of our competitors will fundraise. And so you can actually choose a fundraiser ticket, which is free. So you're not paying anything up front. And as long as you raise $250 or more, you'll never be charged anything. You compete for free. And then the more you raise, the more perks you get. And if for some reason you don't hit that mark, you just end up paying at the door whatever the price was when you registered. So it's a pretty easy process. But we see anybody who actually makes an effort to fundraise, the average fundraiser raises almost $500. So they like blow past that 250. So we never see someone who's like, oh, I tried to fundraise, but I can only get $100.
Yeah.
Or I can only get to the 200. I couldn't get all the way there. It's either they chose a fundraiser ticket and raised zero, or they donated $20 to their page and never shared it, or they're raising 500. We don't get a lot of people who hover around that. Or just below the 250 mark. They're like either at it or above it. So if you make the effort, you're at least competing for free, if not more. It's almost a guarantee. And of course, we have some fundraisers that go above and beyond. So we have perk levels all the way, physical perk levels up to $2,000 where you earn a gi. And there's a bunch of them in between 250 and 2,000 where you get like water bottles and rash guards and hoodies and all sorts of stuff. But we also have a $10,000 perk level. So, and we had something like 16 or 17 people hit it just this year alone, or 2022. And they go on what we call TC Oasis. It's our yearly sort of jiu-jitsu vacation. So last year we went to Puerto Escondido, Mexico. You know, you go to a tropical place, train jiu-jitsu, surf, eat, have fun, that sort of stuff. We're going to Oceanside, San Diego this year, and going to stop by a bunch of the gyms in the area to train with folks there. So staying at Mission Pacific Hotel, which is gorgeous. So those who raise over $10,000 really, you know, get that thank you for creating such an impact for us. But yeah, so you can go all the way, you know, to raising tens of thousands of dollars, or you can just pay an entry fee. Whatever you want to do, you're going to be treated to a well-organized, well-run, efficient, on-time jiu-jitsu tournament, gi only. So we have 20 events all over the country. You know, we can't get everywhere. I still go to almost every event. Last year was the first Tap Cancer Out tournament that I ever missed in my life. So I went like 75 straight tournaments or something without missing one. But I had a wedding. I had a wedding on the same day, and I was in it. So I had to go.
Yeah, you get a pass for that one. Yeah.
But guess what? The tournament was fine without me. Everybody did okay. So maybe I'm not as important as I think I am.
Well, but, you know, you are, because you built a great team, obviously. So that's really good. Yeah.
Yeah. And that was one of the things that, you know, one of my biggest goals last year was to really get that team in place to allow me to start missing more events. So actually one of my personal goals, like the board has handed down onto me this year, is to go to less events. Like I have to miss 4 events. How do I miss 4 events intentionally?
That's gotta drive you crazy though.
Yeah, so I got to pick them, and then we have to be ready for it. So you know, it's because, you know, we want to continue to grow, and in order to do that, I need to not be at so many events and to be focused on other things. So, but we brought on an event manager this year, who Sarah. She is an absolute rock star. She totally has been killing it and has taken so much off my plate, and I just trust everything with her. She really is like the person in charge when we're there at the tournament. I'm just sort of running around doing the things that I need to do. But anyways, so yeah, registration will actually open on January 20th for all the remaining 2023 events. Registration is already open for Phoenix, which is at the end of January, Sunday, January 29th, I believe, whatever that date is. And then Saturday, February 11th, we're in San Diego for something like the 6th or 7th year. And then we have a spring tour and a fall tour. We basically take a truck and a trailer and drive it around the country
Yeah.
and host our events. So
How long did
yeah,
it take
but
you?
you know, we wanted it.
No, I was going to ask you.
Sorry,
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead. You go ahead.
I just want to say we want, like, I'm a competitor too.
Yeah.
So, and I know what it's like to be at a bad tournament.
Yeah.
And I wanted to make sure that it was two things. Like, not only did it have a more positive vibe, you know, people want to win. We have nice, big, thick medals. People want to win, right? But I don't want them to feel that same pressure that you feel like when you're at Worlds or a really big, you know, IBJJF tournament or something where you're just like, you feel like you've only accomplished something if you medal or something, you know,
Yeah.
just by being part of our tournament, you've accomplished something. And not only, it's not just like the fundraising and the things like that, you know, our events, I've always said are do two things. You know, they not only raise money for cancer, but they actually serve the jiu-jitsu community, giving them a way to cope, to remember, to honor. You know, we don't talk about cancer a lot. Like, you have a cancer story that has hit you personally, and I'm not sure how many people in your life actually know that that happened. As soon as once I started Tap Cancer Out, I had a teammate who was a teammate of mine since day one. He was like, "Oh, I heard you're doing this Tap Cancer Out thing. It's really cool. You know, I had cancer," and he like pulled up his shorts and he has like a big scar. And
Wow.
like, I didn't know that. Like, you don't just like announce these things, you know, like, so when we have these events, it gives people that permission to tell their story that is not, it's not dinner conversation, you know, it's not like Matt's eye conversation really that much. So it provides that service for our competitors to just to honor and remember and grieve. And you know, we had a husband who had recently lost his wife to breast cancer, and when he won gold at our very first San Diego tournament, he like broke down on the mat and was like bawling his eyes out, and his whole family ran out and were like laying on top of him and hugging him and holding him. And
Wow.
it's just a really special moment, and it's just not anything you get at any other jiu-jitsu tournament. You know, when you walk into the tournament, it'll look the same. People are throwing each other around, and you know, everyone's yelling and screaming, but at its core, it is something different than any that you can't really get at any other tournament. So
Yeah. How long did it take you to go to be like you know, go around multiple states? How did that start?
we had our first tour in 2018. So we had our first event in 2012, and so it went one event, two events in 2013, two events in 2014, three events in 2015. That's when we went to San Diego,
Hmm.
and then we kept adding an event until we got to like five or six events in a year. And you know, I'm using my vacation time, my PTO from work, you know, because I have to take Friday off. We got to go rent the U-Haul truck, go to the storage facility, take everything out, drive there, drive to Philly, host the setup, host the tournament the next day, put everything back in the truck, drive home, wake up the next morning, drive to the storage facility, drop everything off on Sunday morning, drive back to U-Haul. It was like a whole thing. And to do
Yeah.
it like 5 or 6 weekends a year was a lot.
Yeah.
And so I was finding myself, and I loved what I did in the advertising world, but I found myself more and more just like wanting to rush to get my advertising work done so I could focus on Tap Cancer Out.
Yeah.
And you know, when I got home, all I wanted to do was sit in the computer and keep working on Tap Cancer Out. So it was starting to overtake. I was starting to withdraw a lot. You know, when friends from the agency would move on, I would not replace them with other friends. So it was like,
Yeah.
eventually I wasn't really like friends with anybody there. I would just go sit in my office and I would get my work done
Yep.
in order to do Tap Cancer Out stuff. So I was like, obviously my passion is not for advertising anymore. It's for Tap Cancer Out. Maybe I can actually create something that is sustainable and can grow, and I can hire other people. And so they were really great so I informed them at the end of 2017 that this was something I was going to do. I was able to work part-time for them while keeping my benefits at the beginning, the first half of the year, January to June of 2018. And then on my birthday, June 30th of 2018 was my last day as an advertising agency employee. And then the next day was my first day as a full-time Tap Cancer Out employee. Then that fall, we had our first tour. We did something like 6 or 7 cities.
Wow.
And then it wasn't until, so that was 2018, and we sort of did it again in 2019. 2020 was going to be our first year where we had a spring and a fall tour. So we're basically going to double the number of events. And of course, almost none of that happened. So 2020 was a real difficult year for us, but we survived, and we ended up moving our whole operations from Connecticut to the Charlotte area because I up and moved my whole family down here. So we're here, and so actually, in 2021 was the first year we actually had a spring tour and a fall tour. And then in 2022 was the first year we had that full schedule that we thought we were going to have in 2020, where we have our winter dates, our Phoenix and San Diego dates, our spring tour, and our fall tour, a full schedule of 20 in-person events. And then we also had Global Grappling Day, which was created in 2020 during the pandemic. So that's 21 events. So last year was the first year we had our full 21 event schedule, and then this year we're doing the exact same schedule as last year, flip-flopping some of like the dates, but all the cities are the same. Global Grappling Day, and then we're actually adding golf tournament too.
Yeah, we'll talk about the golf tournament in just a second. I just want to ask, have you been invited back to the Classy Awards, and what awards have you won?
We have. We almost had a full circle moment. We have been nominated, but we have not won.
Oh, okay. Okay.
So yeah, so we were actually nominated twice, but we did not win. There's a lot of very amazing nonprofits, very worthy of the awards. So
well, and jiu-jitsu is so obscure that people are like, yeah, that's cool, but yeah. Right.
Exactly. You know, we're such a niche thing. We don't really fit into like a good category. So you know, it's kind of tough for what we do. And
yeah, so I just see it like when you do win the award, you're going to be a 15-year overnight success in their eyes, right?
Exactly.
Yeah,
exactly. We'll get there someday. Now it's a much more involved nomination process too, like application. It's a lot of work. We'll get there. We'll get there someday. They got to have like a category for like event specific things, because we're a very unique nonprofit in what we do, in that we're a grant maker. So you know, a lot of nonprofits can actually are bringing in the funds, but then also putting those funds to use. So like Charity Water, they're not giving their money to somebody else. They're taking that money and they're building wells, which is fantastic. But like Movember started in the same way, where they were a grant maker. They had a crazy, you know, event where everyone would grow mustaches in the month of November. They'd raise all that money and they'd give it away to a nonprofit. Now they actually have their own programs where they're funding research, where they're actually awarding the researchers. So eventually, if you get big enough, it becomes internal. We very much right now do not want to do any of that. We, at our core, are two things. We are a nonprofit, but we're also a tournament organization, and I have to make sure that we are keeping up with all the other people who are just tournament organizations. You know, like we have to offer the same things that the IBJJF offers, and all of these other local tournaments. Like we have to make sure the experience is better than all of those, so people keep coming back, especially as there are more and more tournaments for them to choose to compete in. And it's a pretty cost prohibitive sport as it is. You can't just compete in jiu-jitsu tournaments every single weekend or you'll go broke. So we have to put out a product. So, you know, most of what we do here is all the logistics of the event, and we lean on our beneficiaries to take all the money that our amazing supporters raise and put them to good use. So
yeah, definitely. So before I definitely want to talk about the golf tournament, but before we move on to that, do you mind if I ask, what was the total number of donation that you guys provided to all your beneficiaries last year?
Last year, I believe the number of gifts was 14. So we have our 10 beneficiaries that we gave our committed $1.2 million to. Wow. We had more to give. So we gave 3 of our former beneficiaries spot donations of $30,000. And then we gave a $10,000 donation to another nonprofit in New York called the Koenig Childhood Cancer Foundation. They actually founded by a childhood cancer survivor who was a camper at Camp Sunshine, which is one of our beneficiaries. She actually appeared in a beneficiary video, which was just recently published on our YouTube channel. So if you go to the Tap Cancer Out YouTube channel. You'll see it. It's the first like long form video we've ever created, but we wanted to interview our beneficiaries to really talk about the impact that Tap Cancer Out makes. So she actually appears in the video, and so we gave them a spot to do. So it was 14 this year. Actually 2 years, or at the end of 2021, it was actually 20 gifts. So it was 1.2 million in total, 1 million to our 9 primary beneficiaries, and then we made 11 spot donations to get to 1.2 million. So we commit a certain amount to our beneficiaries, so they have sort of a predictable number that we're going to give them, as low as 50,000 to as high as 250,000, depending on what they need, what they request, how long we've worked together, things like that. And then if we have more left over, we'll make spot donations as well. So sometimes, so we'll give them to organizations for a variety of different reasons, beneficiaries that we actually couldn't select as a primary beneficiary, but we still wanted to help them. So that sort of stuff.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So, so you don't have enough on your plate. So you're going to start this golf tournament with a similar model to the jiu-jitsu tournament. So tell me about that.
Yeah, so we decided to see if we could take this model and apply it to something other than jiu-jitsu. We also wanted to get our community members who are supporters who don't necessarily do jiu-jitsu. I have a lot of friends and family that have supported us over the years. They'll fundraise, they'll volunteer, but they don't get to actually like compete in the events, and that's always a bummer. So, but they do golf, or some of them do at least. So we wanted to host an event and see if we could take this unique model that we've created of, giving, motivating people to fundraise by giving them perks, but also empowering them to fundraise. So giving them all the tools, all the know-how that we have to help them fundraise as efficiently, effectively as possible. And also all the things that we've learned along the way from the fundraisers that do that fundraise way more than I've ever fundraised in a single, a single hit. So we're applying that to golf. We're going to host a golf tournament on Monday, April 17th. It's going to be here in Charlotte at the Firethorn Country Club. But it was really fun sort of creating the golf model as well. So like it's easy in jiu-jitsu because there's all this jiu-jitsu gear that people like to have, rash guards and gis and that sort of thing. So like what's the golf gear that people want, and how do you do it at the right levels that makes sense financially for us? People golf in foursomes instead of jiu-jitsu. Even though we do have like team fundraising, you're signing up as an individual, you have an individual fundraising page, you have to hit individual goals. How do we apply that to a golf foursome? It's actually going to be fundraising required, which is not something we have in jiu-jitsu, because we want as many people as possible. Not that we don't want as many people as possible in the golf tournament, but there's way more limited spaces. So if as a foursome, they're going to raise $2,000 each at least. And the more they raise, the more stuff they get. So we're really looking forward to it. We have a lot of sponsors already on board, so it should be a fun day, and we'll see if we can flex this sort of muscle that we've learned through our jiu-jitsu events. We can flex it in golf. And if that's the case, then we start exploring all the other places that we could do this as well. And so hopefully beyond the jiu-jitsu community, we can start engaging other communities of passionate individuals who want to make a difference, but they don't, bike, golf, run or swim. So
yeah. So what is your vision for that? Are you gonna have a separate team that does the the winter, spring, fall tours and travels the country as well?
Yeah, you know what? That's a great question. Who knows?
I hope your team isn't looking at each other like this right now, going.
No, so yeah, it could end up someday, whether it's 2 years, 5 years, 10 years down the road, that there's more of like a parent organization, and Tap Cancer Out is just one spoke of this sort of parent organization that oversees all of this impact creation through sports or passions, events, whatever you want to call it. So somebody else might be running. I'll run that. Somebody else would run Tap Cancer Out, and so on and so forth. What's really important is the authenticity. So I think one of the most important elements of Tap Cancer Out was that I am But you know, when we started, I was an actual jujitsu person. I wasn't just like a social entrepreneur who saw a space in the market and was like, hey, this random martial art doesn't seem to have any philanthropic presence. I'm going to go leverage that.
Yeah.
I was a grappler. I was a jiu-jitsu competitor who, you know, I competed a lot. Most of the tournaments were terrible. And I was like, hey, I can host a better tournament and I can make it for a great cause. And if that's the case, how can you ever not compete in this tournament? You
Yeah.
know? And I would visit schools, you know, when we go to a new city, I would fly out to that city ahead of time. And I did so in Charlotte here before I ever knew that I was going to live here, and visited schools and was like, hey, I'm here. I want to roll with you. I can teach a class. I can roll with you guys. I just want to meet you guys and let you know that we're going to have an event here. And a lot of the school owners were like, this is cool. This is unusual. No, like we don't have tournament organizers knocking on our door asking to just come and train.
Yeah.
You know, so I can't do that in every city, in every place, you know, but I try to do that as much as I can. And so as we grow, that authenticity is going to be really important. So like my wife and I met through volleyball. We were both collegiate volleyball players, her much more successful than me. She actually got a scholarship to play. Um, so you know, like maybe there's a way we do that through volleyball, because you know that's something that we've actually played. You know, is it gaming? I love video games. Can we do it
Yeah.
through gaming? I love to golf, so you know, golf makes sense. We have an understanding, and also our event manager has done a million golf tournaments herself. And so however we grow, we are going to make sure that it is authentic. I'm not just gonna look around and be like, hey, this sport that I've never ever had anything to do with, I think we can make it work there.
Right.
So, but it's hard if you can't walk the walk or talk the talk. It's going to be hard. And you also need to know those nuances. Like I understood the nuances of tournaments and what was lacking and what was missing and what makes for a good tournament and what's unnecessary, and you know what parents want and what coaches want. Obviously, I've learned a ton along
Yeah.
the way. There was a lot I didn't know. A lot.
Yeah.
Let me be clear about that. But at least as a competitor, I knew I had gone through that experience from the other side.
Yeah.
So when you host a tournament, you sort of know what you're looking for and what to do. So as we grow, hopefully we can keep that authenticity.
Yeah. So if you were to send a message to the folks in Phoenix, because I'm going to get this out before your tournament, what would be your message to Phoenix? What would be your challenge to the BJJ community in Phoenix? What would you want to say to them?
I would love for you to come to our Phoenix tournament on
Obviously, right? Yeah.
January 29th in Scottsdale, Victoria. So it is actually, so Phoenix, when we went there in 2019, it was I'm sorry, 2020 was our first year. And we actually had over 300 competitors at that first tournament, which is really good for a first tournament. So it was a huge draw, and it was great. And we've sort of kept the momentum year after year. So Phoenix is one of our higher performing cities for a new city. You know, some of our cities we've been going to 10, you know, Massachusetts, we've been going there 10 years and we raised over $300,000 just at that event alone. Mm-hmm. So obviously there's a lot of growth left for Phoenix, but it's also growing quicker than some other cities too. So we're really excited to go there. It's always fun for our team to get out of the cold, although it's not as cold here in Charlotte as it used to be when I lived in Connecticut.
Yeah.
So we're not escaping it as much, but also the challenge is to get your whole team together. You know, we really see the most impact, especially when you have an instructor who's like, I want to support this cause, this tournament. It's a well-run tournament for a great cause, you know, and especially, you know, we understand that not everybody competes. Competing is really hard. And it's not for everybody. People feel like they want to puke. I feel like I want to puke. I get all that. And that's one of the reasons we created Global Grappling Day, because it took away that element of competition. It's just like get together and roll and make a difference. But so I understand that competing is not for everyone. If there's any tournament that you would ever do, I think ours is the best one, because it has that sort of lower element of stress and a higher sort of element of positive vibes and things like that. You know exactly when you're going to compete. You're going to be in and out. It's not a long day because we only have gi. It's not no gi. So everything is really efficient, and and on time. And when things are run well, that eases the stress on the competitor. You know, some of the worst performances I've had as a competitor came from tournaments where, you know, my division was like 6 hours late. You know, like I have my wife drives 2.5 hours to come watch me compete, and then she's got to leave before I even compete because the schedule was so horrifically wrong. And warming up, cooling down, warming up, cooling down on this mat. Now I'm going to switch to this mat. No, you're actually supposed to be back on that mat. Well, you can't even like focus on your game. And then by the time you get on the mat, it's a whirlwind, and someone's blast double legging you, and you're like, well, this is awful.
Yeah. You don't like being in the bullpen for 2 hours?
No, I don't. And so you remember those tournaments that were sort of run well, where you got there, matches on time, you're able to really focus on the task at hand.
Yeah.
And then you end up performing better, and then you end up having fonder memories of those events and things like that. So like, I know what it's like to be that competitor. So I want to make sure that we have that experience from white all the way to black. So, you know, we have a lot of competitors that say, I'm not a competitor. I'm not a jiu-jitsu competitor. I am just a part-time jiu-jitsu person who's trying to stay in shape. This is the only tournament I do. I do one tournament a year, and it's this tournament because it's a great cause, and I know it's going to be run well. And it's, you know, as much as I kind of don't like being out there on the competition mats, it's the coolest one. So I love to hear that. And then I love to see like the competitors that are sort of seasoned competitors that I see at all the IBJJF tournaments, and then they come to ours too, and they're like, well, it's run well. So like I go to tournaments that are run well. You know, I don't have to be competing against other world champions or whatever. If it's going to be run well, I'm happy to come here, and it's for a great cause. So no matter where you are on the competitor spectrum, you should have a good time at our event, and that's the product that I try to put out there. I put a lot of pressure on myself. Hopefully it doesn't trickle down to my team, but I put a lot of pressure on myself to make sure that we are we are hitting all the promises and all the goals, and that we're on time. Like if we're like 10 minutes late, I'm starting to stress out, and I'm starting to sweat, and I'm starting to go to the rings and make sure that everything, you know, like, whereas you're at other tournaments and they're 3 hours late, and the tournament organizers just like shaking hands and having drinks and doesn't look, you have a care in the world. I'm like total opposite. And I'm trying I'm trying to bring my stress level down and to, you know, let things work themselves out. But anyway, so I think if you're in the Phoenix area, you're gonna have a great time at the event. We've been there twice now, and it's always been fantastic, and it's one of my favorite events. So I hope you come. Should be a great time.
No, I love it, man. I love it. So you know, two things that are really important to me as an academy owner, as a coach, is, you know, be on time. And it sounds like you cover that really well. And the second thing is athlete safety. So, can you talk about that maybe a little bit? Your referees, you know, how you train them, or where you get them, or how does that come about? Yeah.
So one of the earliest things I ever did was take the hiring of referees off my plate. I kind of I've never done it. You know, the first tournament was a blur. But as soon as we got to our second tournament, I had a head referee who was doing all the hiring. You know, you really do. You can't really, I don't know how the organizations do it otherwise. You know, you really need to be involved in like the referee circuit. So if you're not refereeing for other tournaments, you're not meeting other referees and things like that. And so we have a fantastic head referee, Sergio Pimentel. He has an academy in Baltimore. He's been our head referee for 3 years now. So he literally handles all that. If anyone ever reaches out to me saying they want a referee, they got to go talk to Sergio. And I trust all of his hiring. He never really has to like run anything by me unless there's like weird circumstances with like people coming from really far, you know, things like that. But we also, one of the reasons we're an IBJJF rules tournament, and some people are like, well, the IBJJF rules are lame, and I get you know where that comes from. When you're a tournament with your like own set of rules, and I can see how that's appealing in a lot of ways, especially in the no-gi. Like if you're really trying to like perfect jiu-jitsu and you think you can do that, you know, you can sort of set your own rules and like, this is the way I really think jiu-jitsu should be scored. But the problem is you have to train your referees in that scoring because it's not normal. So you have to make sure everyone understands, okay, hey, we have a weird 1 point thing where like, you know, if two people double guard pull and then one stands up, they get 1 point, or like, so you have to have all of this training. But if you're following the IBJJF rulebook, then it's basically like, I need to know that this person has the IBJJF rulebook down pat, but at least it's a uniform thing.
I love that.
And
I love that because the IBJJF rule set is the most popular, whether people like it or not, and no one reads the rule set. So if you make up your own rules, no one's going to know what the heck you're doing, right? And there's going to be a lot of complaints. So I think that's perfect. I think you're doing the right thing.
Yes. And I mean, most of the competitors, and certainly like the parents, aren't reading the IBJJ rulebook at all. So they don't even know the rules. So you need to like know those nuances. And I tell the people at the tournament, if you have any like referee questions or concerns, you have to bring in Sergio. Like granted, I'm a black belt, but you don't want me reffing your match. No. I'll mess it up. I'm not a referee. I'm not qualified. I don't know all the rules. I don't keep up with the IBJJF rule changes. Like I hire people to do this. Okay. So I will keep up with the tournament software changes and things like that, but don't ask me to keep up with the rule changes. So like I stay in my lane. But also, the IBJJF rulebook is fairly rigid, which is unpopular with some people, but it's because of the safety that is sort of built into that in knee reaping and things like that. Like, so that's really important to me. And so Sergio hires all of our referees. We also have a lot of referees that will work multiple events. So the referees that we love to work with that are really good will fly in as well. So, I dedicate a decent amount of budget to make sure we're getting the best referees that I get to know personally over time, and things like that. And, of course we have EMTs, at every tournament. It's a good tournament when I don't have to dial 911. But it definitely happens. And we work with it as it goes. It's a combat sport. But knock on wood, we've been pretty okay when it comes to, everyone's had a full recovery.
Good.
In terms of getting injured. So but it's all that stuff is obviously super important to us.
Well, thank you for that. That was a perfect answer, by the way. That was really good. So, I'm really looking forward to your tournament. We got a couple students going in and competing. I'll be there. I don't know that I'll jump in and compete this time, but I promise I'll start fundraising and doing the next one. I have seen your advertisement pop up, and for some reason I never clicked on it. And it came up on Facebook. And the reason, so this is how it happened. This is, so I recently quit my full-time job and I started doing my academy full-time, and I've got other endeavors going on.
Awesome.
Thanks, man. It's scary. So I know what you're doing.
Oh, yeah.
So, but when I catch myself doing something like scrolling on Facebook, I get really upset with myself because I want to be as efficient with my time as possible.
Sure.
But as I catch myself, I think, okay, well, I'm going to find somebody to get on the podcast. Right. So I came across your ad and I clicked on it and I was like, this is awesome. I want to be a part of this. And I contacted you. I wanted to get you on the show, and that's how that came about. So it's happened a few times, and this is really, really, I'm glad we got to do this. Thank you so much for doing it. And, just let everybody know where they can find you, where they can find your foundation, how they can donate, anything that comes to mind.
Yeah, I mean, tapcancerout.org is our website. That's where you'll get the full tournament schedule there. You can all of our backstory, all of our financials. Obviously, we're audited every year. Any organization, it depends where you're registered, but generally any organization that has more than $500,000 in revenue is going to be audited as a nonprofit. So we've been audited for many years. So we have annual reports and our Form 990, all of our financials. We try to be as fully transparent as humanly possible about how every cent is spent or accounted for and things like that. So all of that stuff is on the website, including obviously our tournament schedule. And then you can click to go directly to the tournament page if you want to register for one of our events, which opens on the 20th. But our tournament website is actually built on the classy.org fundraising platform. So Classy creates a fundraising platform. If they didn't, Tap Cancer Out wouldn't exist. So we've been, a customer since day one and will never, ever change. But the great thing is, as soon as you register for the tournament, even if you choose a paid competitor ticket and have no interest in fundraising, you're still going to get a fundraising page. And we actually have a lot of people who end up our top fundraisers who chose a paid ticket. And then they get this fundraising page, which is good to go out of the box. And they say, oh, let me take this URL. I'll just throw it in my Instagram bio and see if anyone clicks on it. And then they get 1 donation, then 2 donations. Then, well, I'll click this button and see if, I'll do this connected Facebook fundraiser, because in your classy.org dashboard, you can create a fundraiser that connects to your Classy page. So we see all those funds come in, and then they share that, and then they get more and more and more. So you'd be surprised how many people don't think that they can really create that much of an impact. And then they end up creating a huge impact.
Yeah.
So everybody gets a fundraising page, whether they want it or not. Paid competitors can obviously just ignore it, or they can use it. It's fully customizable. You add your photo. You can also create fundraising teams. And so your academies will have a team. We award the top fundraising individual, top youth fundraiser, and the top fundraising team at every single event. We'll also recognize the top 10 overall fundraisers at the end of the year, top overall individual fundraisers, all that sort of fun stuff. So yeah, that's the stuff we sort of celebrate. We don't have like a tournament points winner or anything, because we're not really worried about what happens on the mats. That's all. This is all just a party. This is a celebration of what we accomplished in the weeks and months leading up to the tournament. So certainly you're going to get on the podium, get a big, nice, thick, heavy medal. But otherwise, we're really celebrating the fundraising accomplishments. So even if, we've had top fundraising, in Dallas, our top fundraising individual was also our top youth fundraiser, and she alone was our top fundraising team. Wow. She was the only person from her team to attend.
Wow.
And she individually out fundraised every other team. I mean, she raised well over $10,000. Like, she did an absolutely bang up job. But so yeah, you don't even need a huge squad to win that award. Usually it's anchored by, 1, 2, or 3 prolific fundraisers. But also we have a lot of top fundraising teams that win it out of sheer volume of competitors. When they, they bring 40 competitors, each of them raises $200, $250. It goes a long way. So,
yeah.
But I was saying earlier, when we see academy owners really, cheerlead for this Tap Cancer Out event and encourage people to go to it, that's where we see the most impact. And even as a competitor, whenever my instructor was like, I'm going to be at this tournament, or I'm going to be competing in this tournament, I always wanted to go, you know, and I did a lot of competing alone. But if I ever heard that he was going to be at a tournament or competing, whether he was or wasn't competing, I wanted to be there as well. So when we see that top down approach, that's when that's what I love to see. And that's when we see teams coming, and we've had teams like make custom t-shirts just for the Tap Cancer Out tournament.
Wow.
And they all show up in their t-shirts. Yeah, they got, there's like 40 competitors, another 80 parents, it feels, and they're just like swarms of people from the same academy. That's always cool to see. So
I love it. I love it.
Yeah.
Well, cool. Well, I wish you the best of luck with all of the fundraising in 23, and looking forward to seeing my first Tap Cancer Out tournament this month. And if you're in the area, if you're in the Phoenix area or not, fly out and support this cause. It's an amazing cause. And check out the website tapcancerout.org, and you can learn all about Jon and his journey, all about the journey of Tap Cancer Out, and see what's coming up in the future. I'm really excited for you, man. That's gonna be really good stuff.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Appreciate
man. Thank you for being on.
My pleasure.
All right.